It's ranking time. Today we have the best IEMs at around $100, and starting with the most resolving one, we have the Simgot EM6L. These punch well above the price point, just as resolving if not more than most IEMs at $200. Its upper mid's focused with well extended treble and open vertical horizontal staging, enough bass, not boring, and it has a very precise imaging, and overall just very solid with no major hiccups. The layering is also very clean like the Hexa, but with more bass definition and sharpness to the notes, so overall I would say it's a slight upgrade from the Hexa. However, if you are sensitive in the upper mids 3 to 6K region like me, then it's going to get fatiguing at higher volumes, but at mid volume it's perfectly fine. Comparing it to the Starfield 2, the EM6L is overall smoother and more balanced. The Starfield 2 sounds more lively and sharper, but it's just a bit too much for me personally. It gets a bit too hot and sharp. Gaming wise, the EM6L is also the best around $100. Again, very accurate imaging for FPS shooters, and there's enough low end but not overwhelming that it just overtakes the entire game with bass. The boosted upper mids also help details stand out more, as well as making footsteps and gunshots easier to pick out and hear. It's immersive for atmospheric games as well, like Hitman, Cyberpunk, GTA, as well as competitive shooters like CSGO and Valorant. I found the EM6L to have pretty great depth perception, so it helps with layering and the distance of enemies and the accuracy of how far the enemies are, and overall just a very solid set for gaming. And if you want something cheaper, you can grab the Truthier Critical Red with the ohm adapter, which is very similar to the EM6L but just less resolving. As for the bassy and warm category, my pick would be the Kiwi Years Quartet. It's got a nice slam in the mid bass without going bass head levels of bass, and vocals aren't buried either, but I will say it's nowhere near as resolving as the EM6L. Like most of the warm sets, the bass does run into the issue of getting tangled with busier rock and middle tracks. I can feel a little bit muddy in busier passages. Again, don't expect a technical monster with this type of tuning at this price. A cheaper version of this would be the Blondes at $300, and if you want a nice rumble but without the extra mud that comes with the mid bass, then you can try the HBB Con, which is sub bass focus and gives you that subwoofer like feeling. But it does lack mid bass, so that's where the trade-off is, and it can sound a little bit thin on hip-hop tracks. Bass head wise, so we're talking a shit ton of bass now. My recommendation would still be the KB Ross Finch at $20. It just slams like a monster and does everything a bass head would want. You can also go for the Legato, which does have bass head levels of bass, and it's technically better, so a little bit cleaner, slightly better details, but it just doesn't slam as hard as the Ross Finch, so just a heads up. On the other hand, if you're looking for something clean, then I recommend the 7Hz Sonus, which is basically the Hexa but cheaper and with more forward vocals, better vocals in my opinion. Both the Sonus and the Hexa are on the leaner and more vanilla side of things, and tech wise both are very similar with a slight edge to the Hexa in terms of overall layering, but you're not going to notice much of a difference. And if you're going for technicalities, then you might as well just grab the EM6L. I would pick the Sonus because the vocals are more grounded and easier to hear, whereas the voices on the Hexa are a bit light and more distant. Speaking of vocals, my pick for that would be the Let's Sure DZ4 at high volumes. Now it does need more juice, but it's by far, in my opinion, the best vocals you can get at even $200 or even before the T, which is like $300 for vocal centric tracks. Disclaimer, it does trip itself when it comes to busier tracks, so not the best in terms of separation, clarity, etc. But if we're talking indie and ballads, you know, slower songs, less busy, very vocal focused, then it just takes the crown. The vocals are just incredibly natural, powerful, intimate, full sounding without getting fatiguing, and also scales like very well, so you can be very immersed in the music. However, if you like listening at mid to lower volumes, then the Tanchagem Ola is still the king there. Very clean, sweet, like spring water. As for treble hits, it's still going to be the 7Hz Dioko from before or the Sennheiser IE200, only if you can get it on sale. If you can't, don't sweat it. They both have that airy sizzle, very sharp and detailed timbre to them. Less bass and upper mids focus, but with the focal point being on the treble. A downside to this is that it's hard to listen to them at high volumes, but that's more or less expected with that much treble. And if you want more bass or a more V-shaped sound, then the Kiwi Years Dolls is a great, very exciting and electrifying experience without breaking the bank. I personally wouldn't pay too much for a V-shaped set, but if that's your thing, then you can maybe also try the ICO OH10 when it's on sale, which is around 150, 100 something. The stage and bass texture is a lot better than the dolls. For the final categories, we have the Tangent 1 as the best all-rounder. Yes, even beating out the Red and kind of beating out the Alina. My reasoning for this is that it's cheaper, and it sounds more engaging and less thin than the Red. The Red still has better sub bass, so if you want still that sub bass clean sound, then it's still gonna be better, but it just sounds kind of bland, too safe, even with the 10 ohm adapter. The mid bass scoop just kills the fun for me. Like, you can try it with a higher 75, 150, 200 ohm adapter, but stock wise, I like the Tangent 1 a lot better. As for the Alina SC, at $100, I don't think it's 4 times better than the Tangent 1. If you can get it on sale, then I still think it's worth it. The staging and imaging is more precise and more holographic on the Alina, and overall it's a little bit more resolving. Now, for the best value IEM, so for your bang for the buck, we have the Simgot EW100P. It reminds me of the Corks, but without the floaty timbre and mid-bass scoop. A really good all-rounder, not as natural and smooth as the Tangent 1, but it's cheaper. You can get it on sale for like $12, $15 or something. I've seen it going for $10 before on AliExpress. The Simgot does nothing wrong, not a technically amazing set obviously, but still a very solid set. Now, me personally, I would still take the Tangent 1 for $10 more, but the EW100 is technically the best given its price, so gotta give credit where it's due. And finally, for my favorite IEM around $100, we have the Tongzu Fudu and the P1 Max, of course. Can't forget about the pandas. The Fudu is basically just a fun sounding harmon with actual good mid-bass slam. Think of it as a more extroverted version of the Hexa and Sonus, so less boring. It's solid across the board. The bass has a nice slam and texture. Vocals are engaging but not piercing. It could use more air, but I'm not expecting amazing treble at this price. And tech wise, also very solid, not EM6L levels, but between the Alina and Sonus. Plus the Senkai and the Venus tips really helps with the fit and comfort for me personally, which improves the overall sound because tip rolling is a thing, unfortunately. And as for the P1 Max, it's got this slightly warm but still airy signature, very mid-range focus, so if you love mids, then these are very good, and just feels very comforting, smooth, and even in a way nostalgic. The pandas remind me of a warm, bright, and comforty fuzzy sunset. Very unique. I highly recommend you guys to try it at higher volumes. But yeah, I hope this video helped. Update in the comments, and I'll see you guys in the next one.